I see so many people over here and a lot of familiar names also. Hi Gungun, hi Shriya, hi Power Shine World. Nice to see you again. Hi Nirvi, hi Mayank, hi everyone over here. I saw, who else am I seeing? Mayank, hi. Okay, hi Agash Class 8, hi Navneet, hi Raksha. Okay, so can you see me? Can you hear me? Quickly tell me. Then I'm going to proceed super fast. Hi Nirvi, hi Varnika. Varnika, ideas, very nice. Hi, I'm Adamya. Hi Adamya, all right. Hi Navneet, just took your name. Gungun says you are perfectly audible and visible. Hello my friends. I am so excited to be here with you today. I love taking live sessions for you. Of course, I also like taking the pre-recorded sessions, but live sessions mein maza hi kuch aur alag hai, right? Okay, so listen. Are you ready for mission midterm? How many of you have midterm exams going on? Come on, show me, give me a thumbs up to say that if you have midterms coming up. Hi, sweetie. Hi, Arpita. Yes, Navneet says, let's start. I'm also waiting. Hi, Kritika. Welcome to the class. All right, superb. Hi, Ankita. Okay, Power Shine World is Ankita. I'll remember that, okay? Hi, Devapriya. All right. So listen, sometimes I tend to get everybody's names wrong because, you know, there are so many people and then the name says something else. So please forgive me if I get the name wrong. But I will try my best, okay? Now, I want to ask you, yes, Nirvi says I have midterms. Who else has midterms? Only Nirvi. Come on. Oh, Gungun is 15 September. Yes, I think Gungun mentioned this also earlier. Udayan, why there are so less sessions for social science? Udayan, there are a lot of factors. We're trying to balance between many classes. And we're also trying to balance with different schedules of children. So we're really trying our best. Bear with us, but we will increase the pace as soon as we can. Right? Okay, now everyone says, oh, okay. SST exam, you scored 98%. Nirvi, that's superb. Okay, Navneet also says this month. Great. 9 September. Very good. Now, I know that your midterms are coming. I'm saying even if your midterms are not coming, this is a good way to prepare because midterms mean middle of the term. And this is a great way to sort of revise what we've learned so far. And a lot of times people say, I don't like midterms, I have to study. I say, chill. It's a good thing because that studying is actually going to help us to ace our final exams. Right? So with that, let us start with Class 8 Social Science exam prep. Now, what we've done for you over here is that we've put together a few chapters, the first 2 or 3 from each, first 2 or 3 chapters in each of your subjects, which means history, geography, civics. Right? And we've taken different formats of questions and we've tried to give you a combination of different sorts of questions so that you can understand what are the different patterns of questions that you will get. And apart from that, you will understand how to answer these questions. Okay? So, are you ready? Because I definitely am. Hi, Aisha. You wanted me to take your name. Hi, Aditya. Okay, please start class. Oh, please class start 7. We will try our best. Neera, we will do this. We will try. Okay, come on. Are you ready? Fast. I'm not going to start if you're not telling me that you're ready. Come on. Are you ready for me to start this session or no? Nobody is saying that I'm not starting. Yeah, finally Nirvi says, I'm ready. All right. Okay, so only Nirvi is ready. Nobody else is ready to take this session. Sweetie says, yes, ma'am. Okay, cool. So now, our first section that we're going to be approaching today is MCQs or multiple choice questions. Now, multiple choice questions are generally 1-mark questions. So, how do we have to answer multiple choice questions? So, you will be given a question, then you will be given 3 or 4 options and you have to select which is the right option. So, are you ready? Let's do this. Let's start. Now, I'm seeing so many people saying, I'm ready. Yes. Okay, ready for the first question. And you have to try to answer this along with me, okay? I will explain the answers, but at the same time, you have to give me the answer that you know. So, your first question is, James Mill divided Indian history into 3 periods. Choose the option that reflects James Mill's periodization. Is it A, Hindu, Muslim, Christian? Is it B, Hindu, Muslim, British? Is it C, Hindu, Mughal, British? Or D, ancient, medieval and modern? What is the correct answer? Okay, I say some B's over there. Ankita says C, a lot of B's. And Shreya says MCQ says most confusing questions. It's actually not so confusing if you actually read the answer. Well, the answer to this question, I see a lot of people have given the correct answer, is definitely B. Now, this is a fact-based question. There's nothing much to understand in this. We know that James Mill was a historian who did periodization. And according to him, periodization of India was Hindu, Muslim and British periods. But I think a lot of it's been said, and a lot of studies have shown that a lot of historians disagreed with this viewpoint. And in fact, James Mill's example of periodization is used as an example to show that this is not how periodization should be done. Right? Okay, so pat yourself on the back if you have got the correct answer. Okay. Now, let's move on to our next question. The Battle of Plassey was fought between, was it A, Siraj-ud-Daulah and East India Company? Now I'm going to go very slowly because I find the pronunciations little confusing. I'm sure you do too. The second one is Shuja-ud-Daulah and East India Company. C is Shah Alam and East India Company, or D, Mir Qasim and East India Company. Who was the Battle of Plassey fought between? Come on. I see some people saying A. I'm not ignoring you, Manpreet. I would never. All right. Yes, I see a lot of correct answers coming up. Yes, the answer is definitely A. Now, please remember that there sometimes tends to be a little bit of confusion. Most people get confused between Siraj-ud-Daulah and Shuja-ud-Daulah. Now you have to remember that Siraj-ud-Daulah was the one who fought the Battle of Plassey. But Shuja-ud-Daulah was actually the Nawab of Awadh. And the battle that he fought was the Battle of Buxar. Right? So please remember it like that. And remember, this is nothing but a fact-based question. Okay, let's move. If you got the correct answer, pat yourself on the back. All right, okay. Now, let's move on to our next question. Under whose governor generalship was the policy of paramountcy initiated? Was it A, Lord Dalhousie, B, Lord Mountbatten, C, Lord Curzon, and D, Lord Hastings? Hi, Charanjit. What is the correct answer? Now, before we discuss what the correct answer is, who can tell me what the policy of paramountcy is? Come on, come on, come on. What is the policy of paramountcy? It's like a tongue twister. What am I saying? Okay. What is the policy of paramountcy? What does this mean? Come on, I want to see some answers. Okay, I see a lot of different answers coming up. A, D, 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 D. What is paramountcy? Let me tell you if nobody's answering. Paramountcy is basically the policy where the British said that the native rulers would basically have power or could rule their territories. However, yes, I saw an answer over there to say that the British are superior. British are superior, the East India Company is superior, which means that even though the native kings are ruling over their areas, who is the, how do you say it in Hindi, the Bada Bap, or who is the one who they are answerable to? They are answerable to the British. So the British are paramount or superior to the native rulers. Now, under whose governor generalship was the policy of paramountcy initiated? Well, the answer is D, Lord Hastings. That is the correct answer. So, if you said D, super. Yes, Medha, that is the correct answer. Okay. Ma'am, but we haven't studied chapter 2 of history and civics. Udayan says, no problem, Udayan. This will be like a practice session for you, a revision session for you. Then when you go ahead and actually study the chapter, you'll be able to understand it easier, right? Okay, so Lord Hastings is the correct answer. Let's move on to the next one, which is an easy peasy question. Which of the following is not a non-renewable resource of energy? Is it A, coal, B, petroleum, C, solar, or D, natural gas? Come on, Who is giving me the correct answer? Now, you have to understand one very important thing. You have to, Krishnendu, hi Krishnendu, I can never ignore you. I'm sorry, I just didn't see your message, right? Gungun, you want Menti? We will try and we will organize a Menti for you, okay? I'll put it across to the channel. Fine? Now I see some people saying C, some people saying B, some people saying, okay, I'm largely getting B and C over here. Now the trick over here is to read the question properly. The question says, which of the following is not a non-renewable resource of energy? Not a non-renewable source, right? So first let us understand what are renewable resources and what are non-renewable resources. Renewable resources are those resources which are unlimited in stock, which means even if we humans keep using these natural resources, we will never run out of them, right? So they are exhausted even after, they're not exhausted even after continuous utilization. Some examples of renewable energy would be solar energy, wind energy, because basically the wind doesn't get over, the sun doesn't get over. Now, on the other hand, non-renewable resources are those which do have a limited stock in nature, which means that these resources cannot be immediately replaced when they are depleted or exhausted. And examples of these would be, for example, coal or petroleum. Right now, we have to answer which one of these is not a non-renewable resource. So when you're saying not a non-renewable resource, the question is actually asking us then which one of these is a renewable resource. So which one of these is a renewable resource? The answer is C. Who said C? A, B and D? No, the correct answer is C. Yes, Gungun, solar energy is produced on the sun and the sun is renewable. The sun doesn't go only anywhere, which is a good thing for us, I think. Alright. So we had to choose the renewable resource, and this is why I say you must read your questions properly, because sometimes there are these tricky questions, and especially, you know, when you're in a hurry and you're giving your exam and you're like, I have to finish, and then you don't read. So you have to be very careful, right? Be mindful. Alright, let's move ahead and let us talk about question number 5. Now, question number 5 has a paragraph that we have to read. It says, the major factors of soil formation are the nature of the parent rock and climatic factors. Other factors are the topography, role of organic material, and time taken for the comparison or composition of soil formation. All these differ from place to place. Now, in light of this paragraph, which means in context or in reference to this particular paragraph, we have to say which of the following soil factors influences the chemical properties of soil the most. Remember, which of these factors influences the chemical properties of soil? Is it A, climatic conditions, B, parent rock, C, terrain, or D, none of the above? Alright, some people are saying A. Then Gungun is also saying A. Agash is saying parent rock. Ankita is saying A. A lot of people have got A as the answer. Well, let me explain to you first. Let's understand the factors that are responsible for soil formation in the first place. The factors that are responsible for soil formation are number 1, parent rock. Now, how is parent rock responsible for formation? Well, technically, this is the source material which basically then breaks down or weathers down and gives us soil. So this is obviously very important. This parent rock sort of, you know, undergoes changes, expansion, contraction because of climatic changes or weather changes. So when it's hot, the parent rock expands. When it's cold, it contracts, and as a result, there are cracks that are formed on this parent rock, and that is how weathering takes place. So this is a very big factor. Second is climate. Now, climate is obviously very important because climate determines how hot or cold it is, and temperature and heat and cold influences weathering or the breaking down of rock. So this is also very important, right? Then we talk about relief or altitude or slope. Now, relief or altitude of slope, basically we're talking about that on the slopes, it'll be a thinner deposit of soil, whereas at the bottom, at the base of the slope, you'll have a thicker deposit of soil because naturally the soil is going to sort of break and, you know, fall down the mountain. So to this extent, that, you know, the thickness or the thinness of the soil depends on relief or altitude. Apart from this, you have vegetation and other life form, which is you have so much vegetation, so much bacteria, so many living organisms that are, you know, there in the soil. They live, they die, they decompose. This adds to the fertility of the soil. So to this extent also, soil formation is affected by organic factors. Apart from that, there is time. Time does affect the process of soil formation. How? Because more weathering, right? So accordingly, this also helps the formation of soil. Now, all these factors affect the formation. The question over here is, which one of these affects the chemical properties of soil? Now, I want to tell you, a lot of you I saw said A. Okay, A was climatic conditions, if I saw correctly, right? A is climatic conditions. Now, the answer is not A, because the answer is actually parent rock, which was B. How does parent rock affect the chemical composition of soil? Well, parent rock, right, like I told you before, is the source material. So based on the type of parent rock that you have, you will get that kind of soil. So this will affect the color of the soil, the permeability of the soil, the texture of the soil, the mineral of the soil, mineral content of the soil, as well as the chemical properties of soil. So the answer is B, because it is the source material that affects the chemical properties of soil, right? Right. So all of you who do, Sindhu Bhai says, do not understand, please again, ma'am. Chemical properties very simply depends upon what is the source material. Where is that soil coming from? So soil is coming from the parent rock, and the type of parent rock will decide what are the chemical properties, what are the color, what are the texture. Very, very simple. Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad, Gungun. I'm glad that you understood. All right, all those who got it correct, pat on the back. Let's move on. Question number 6. Same paragraph, different question. Oh, no. Sorry, it's not a different question. This one. Sorry. This is the correct answer to the same question. What am I saying? Okay, all right. Now, let's move on to the next one, which is question number 7. Which one of the following is not in favor of the conservation of water? Now, I got a question over there to say, ma'am, is water a renewable or a non-renewable resource? Well, Nirvi, technically water is a renewable resource, but we know that because it changes its form in terms of the water cycle. However, the point over here is that whatever little bit water we have, we are exhausting it by contaminating it or polluting it. So in that sense, we really are depleting it. And if it gets over, then we will have a problem, right? Okay, so this is a very logical thing. Now, which of the following is not in favor of the conservation of water? Is it A, treating the wastewater and reusing it for industrial needs? Is it B, mandatory implementation of rainwater harvesting? Is it C, increasing the vegetation cover? Or is it D, the conversion of wetlands into settlements? Archana saying B or D, some people are saying D, some Manya is saying D, Aditya saying D, Aditya, Ishika saying D, Nirvi saying D, okay, Aditya is saying C. Okay, now logically, let us understand this, okay? Let's take the first 3 factors. The first one was the treatment and the reusing of wastewater. Now, if we were to treat and reuse the wastewater, it will help us to conserve water, no? We have to talk about what? We have to talk about which of these is not in favor of conservation of water. That's why I said we have to read the question properly. Treating the water and reusing the water is in favor of conserving water. It will help to conserve water. Next, mandatory rainwater harvesting. Obviously, rainwater harvesting will also definitely help to conserve water. No two ways about it. We're saving the resource, right? Then we have vegetation cover. Vegetation cover, some of you said vegetation cover is not in favor of conserving water. Well, that's not true, because when you have vegetation cover, vegetation is what? Plants, trees. When you have plants or trees, the roots of these trees basically go and they hold the soil together, right? And what happens is that keeps, it basically replenishes the groundwater and it reduces runoff, right? So basically, again, we are talking about definitely it affecting, being a good method to conserve water, right? But conversion of wetlands into settlements, that is not in favor of conversion of water. What are wetlands? Wetlands are basically swampy areas. They're basically bodies of water. Now, if you build houses over these wetlands, actually they act like a, they act like a sponge. They sort of, stabilize our ecosystem. Now what we are doing is, we are removing all these wetlands, we are building houses over there. So what has happened is the destabilizing factor has gone away. You may get floods in that area. You may get so many other things which are not really good. So it's not really in favor of conservation of water. And the most logical thing to think about over here is that you're actually removing a water body which is providing us with water, and you're building houses on it. So that's definitely not about conservation of water. All right? Thank you. Happy Teachers Day in advance. Charanjit says, you're most welcome. Thank you so much. Aditya, no problem if you got it wrong, because this is the way we learn, right? Okay, now let's move on to our next question. Now read this carefully, please. When did the INC, or the Indian National Congress, make the demand for a constituent assembly? Was it A, 1909? Was it B, 1921? Was it C, 1934? Or D, 1946? Come on! What is the correct answer? What is the correct answer? 1909, 1921, 1934, 1946. When did the Indian National Congress make the demand for a constituent assembly? Well, let us discuss this, because there is generally a little bit of confusion. I see some answers over there saying B, some people are saying D. Yeah, so generally there is a little bit of confusion in this. Let me tell you what the confusion is. There are two sets of dates that people normally confuse. One is 1934. Now, in 1934, the leaders of the Indian National Congress, they realized that they needed a constitution. There were so many economic shortages, there was inequality, there was untouchability. So they basically needed a constitution. So they put up a demand to the British for a constituent assembly that could draft the constitution in 1934. Right? So this was when the demand was made. However, the establishment of the Constituent Assembly didn't happen in 1934. That happened in 1946, quite later. Quite a lot later, in fact more than 10 years later. So the correct answer over here is, when did the Indian National Congress make the demand for a Constituent Assembly? It is 1934. Whoever got the answer correct, pat yourself on the back, and if you didn't, there's no problem. That's how we learn. Hi Amrita, welcome. You won't be new to the class very long, much longer, because we're all like a family over here, so welcome in. Okay. Now we move to our next session, next section. We finished our MCQs. Now this is true or false, which means sahi jawab ya galat jawab. All right. I feel like I'm running a KBC show. You know how they're on KBC, sahi jawab. That's what we're going to be doing. Okay, let's move on to this question. Question number 9 says, archives are the specialized institutions to preserve important records. Is this true or false? Come on. Come on, come on. Bye, Krishnendu. You can always visit the video later. No problem. All right. Thank you, Manya, for Happy Teachers Day. Quickly, what is the answer? Come on, come on, come on. Archives are specialized institutions to preserve important records. Is this true or false? Come on. Ishika says true, Aditya says true, Krishnendu says true, Prachna is a premium user of BYJU'S Superb, Gungun says A, true. All right. Yes, let us understand, please. The British wanted to rule over India in the colonial period. To rule over India, they first had to document all the information of India, which they did through surveys and census. They wanted to know more about soil quality, population. So they had all this information. Now, getting all this information, documenting this information is only 50% of the work. The other 50% of the work is storing or preserving this information that they have, because if this information is not preserved, then a lot of important data is going to be lost. So they created archives, which were basically places to store this documentation. So when the question says archives are specialized institutions to preserve important records, this is Absolutely the Sahi Jawab. Well done. Archana, it's absolutely no problem, sweetie. If you're getting all the answers wrong, no problem. Treat this as a learning lesson. Today you will get it wrong in your exam. You won't get it wrong. What's the big deal? We're all here to learn, right? The most important thing is that we learn from it. That's very important. Okay. Let's move on. Yeah. Kitna? 1 crore rupees you're giving the correct answer. Right. Let's do that, yeah. Okay. Question number 10. Which of the following statements is or are true? Number 1, the statement says, all resources have some utility and value. Statement number 2 says, the value of the resource is the same all the time. Is it A, 1 only is true, B, 2 only is true, C, both 1 and 2 are true, or D, none of the above are true? Come on, come on, come on, come on. What is the answer over here? Let us discuss this. You put in your answers. I'm discussing it with you anyway. First of all, we know that all, and I've taught this to you in my, in my session on resources also. We know that we are all dependent on resources because resources have some utility for us. Like this pen, I can write with it pen. So the utility or the usability of it gives it utility for me. So all resources have utility. This is absolutely true. It is this utility which gives the resource its value. Right? So for me, this is writing value because I can write with it, right? Now, the second, so this is absolutely correct, the first one. Now let's talk about the second statement. The second statement says, the value of the resource is the same all the time. Well, not really. The value of resources changes over time. It is dynamic. It changes. For example, in the previous days, you had land, right? So take land as a resource. So in the olden days, you had less population. Because of less population, not so many people, you had much more land. More availability of land, or basically higher availability. So if you have higher availability, there is lesser demand, and which means the value of land is low, right? Then later on, as the population starts increasing, there is more demand of land on land, and as there is more demand on land, the value also basically goes. Oh, sorry, more demand on land means less available over here, right? So the value of land becomes high. So you see, the value does not remain the same over a period of time, and which means that number 1 is true, but number 2 is false, and which means that A is the Sahi Jawab. Yes, Aditya, absolutely right. Everything can't have the same value, right? Absolutely, that's correct. So the answer is, Sweetie Singh, so the answer is A. Arpita, sorry. Sorry, I told you, sometimes I get people's names wrong because so many people over here. Please forgive me. Okay, now, ta-da! We move to our next section, which is short answer questions, which are also 1-mark questions. Now, let me tell you, 1-mark questions, which means you have to give me approximately 1 or 2 points to answer this question. So this would be approximately 1 or 2 sentences. So you don't need a long and detailed answer for this. Whatever question they ask you, you answer to the point. Are you ready for this? Okay, now this question says, what is meant by minority? Who can answer this question before I give you the correct answer? What is meant by the term minority? Come on, come on, come on. What does Sweetie Singh love? Sweetie Singh says, I love that. What is meant by the term minority? Put in your answers. Then I will go ahead and discuss the answer. I'm not giving the answer just like that. Okay, Arpita says, okay, I like this question. Is that, have I got the name correct, Arpita? Sindhubai Vankat is Arpita, right? Prajna says, yes. Aisha says, thank you so much for this session. Dhirendra Dash says, less. Very good. Aditya says, means less people are interested in something. Amount of people. Underaged for a reason, population is low, less minor group in the society, less people interested in something. Well, I think some of you have got the correct answer in terms of the word less. Less is definitely a key word over here. But it's not about less people being interested in something. It's about a lesser number. We're talking about numerical strength over here. Right? The number is very, very important. So, minority basically is a group or a community that forms the lesser portion of a given population in a region. So, you're talking about a lesser number. Basically, when you're talking about lesser portion of the population, you're talking about a lesser number. Now, a minority group may be determined on the basis of either race, ethnicity, religion, or even language. So these are the factors that determine how a group could be a minority group, but that basically the meaning of the word minority is that they are lesser in number, and minorities are actually very important to study about, because when we study about minorities, we then tend to understand, what are the problems that they are facing, because they're not included in the larger section, right? So what are the problems they are facing? They may have some disadvantages, and so the study of minorities is very, very important. Yes, Nirvi, it means something in less numbers. Absolutely right. Right? Okay. Smaller number are part of a group, less than half. Yes, basically very, very less in number in terms of the population. With that, we move on to our 2 marks question. Now, I said 1 mark question is 1 to 2 points. 2 mark questions, you give me approximately 2 to 3 points. Right? So, it will be approximately 2 to 3 sentences. Right? Minority in taking family decisions. Well, Aditya, that could be possibly true, because maybe you are a minority in the sense that, you're the youngest, and so people don't take your decision very seriously, so you feel you're part of a minority group. But generally, we're talking about minority in terms of a population, right? Okay. Now, let's move on to our question, which says, what do you understand by mercantile? Give one example of a mercantile trading company. Come on, what is the meaning of mercantile? Think. This, okay, I'll give you a hint. This is from chapter number 1 of history. Come on. What is the meaning of mercantile? I'm not giving you the answer. You have to tell me. Chalo. What's the answer? What Amrita says, ma'am, I like you. Thank you. What is the meaning of the term mercantile? Thank you, Amrita. Aditya says European or Portuguese. Yes, that would be an example. Yes, R-log. R-log says mercantile means trading. So, let me explain to you a little bit more briefly. A mercantile company, or basically a mercantile is a business enterprise or a company that makes profit primarily through trade. So, the very important thing over here is two words are important. One is profit and one is trade, which means a mercantile is a business organization or a business enterprise that makes profit through trade. Now, because profit is very, very important, what do these companies do, or these business enterprises do? They buy goods very cheap and then they sell them at very expensive prices so that they can make their profit. Right? So this is what a mercantile company is. And an example of a mercantile company, I saw somebody saying earlier European, Portuguese, absolutely right. But the biggest example that we have of a mercantile company is East India Company. East India Company was actually a trading company that wanted to trade with places or buy goods from places in the East. And India fell to the east of Britain, so it came to trade. I mean, India was not India at that point in time, but it was ruled by many different kingdoms. But basically, they came to trade over here, right? So this is an example of mercantile, right? Yes, buy in low price, sell in high price, so that they get more profit, right? Okay, now let's move on to our next question, which is, briefly describe sustainable development. Oh, geography. Okay, how will you answer this question? Now, you will answer this question, number 1, by defining sustainable development. So, this is the first point. And the second point, you will talk about when this was adopted. So, who can tell me what is sustainable development and where was it adopted? Come on. Tell me. Aditya says, was it started in Surat? No. East India Company first came to Kolkata, Aditya. Right? Pranya says, because of BYJU'S, I got full marks in social. Yay! Thank you, Riya. She's my favorite teacher. Come on. East India Company and Britishers. Britishers is the race of people. East India Company was a British trading company. Right? So that is the difference, basically. Okay, and eventually the East India Company was responsible to the crown or to the British people. So they were basically British. Yeah, but Britishers are the larger race. Okay, now I see carefully using resources such that besides meeting the requirements of the present, we are meeting the requirements of future generations also, using resources carefully planning and saving resources, absolutely right. Now this is your answer, exactly what you've said, and you will also talk about when was it adopted? When was it adopted, sustainable development? Where or when was it adopted? Come on, who knows? Where did they adopt the plan for sustainable development? Come on, come on. So you've given me the definition, very good. Part 1 you've done. Part 2 is what? Where was this adopted? Come on, come on, come on. Where was the decision taken to have a plan for sustainable development? Nobody's giving me the answer over there. I'm going to cry. Yeah, well, 1987 Brundtland report, yes, defined development as sustainable development as this particular development, as this particular definition, absolutely right. But let me tell you that the action plan for sustainable development was at the Earth Summit in Brazil in 1992, okay? So basically what we are saying is that we had a lot of leaders who were there at the Earth Summit, which was in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and they got together and came up with an action plan for sustainable development. Right? So sustainable development is development that takes place without damaging the environment and without compromising with the needs of future generation. This is part 1. This is the definition. And then we are talking about when it was adopted. So this would be the way that you answer this question, part 2. Right? Okay, let's move on to our next question, which says, how is the population distributed on land? So how will you answer this question? Number 1, you will go ahead and explain the 2 types of distribution, which is densely populated areas and sparsely populated areas. And number 2, you will give examples for both types, and this is how you will answer this question. So the most important thing to remember over here is that population distribution on land is not uniform, which means some areas of land have lots of population or are densely populated, and some areas are sparsely populated. Right? Now, which areas are densely populated and which areas are sparsely populated and why? Let's talk about that. So, densely populated areas means you have maximum amount of population living in these particular areas. Why would people live in particular areas? Well, ideally people would like to live on flat and fertile land. Why would they like to live on flat and fertile land? Because this would increase the chances for their economic activity and would increase their basically them earning more money, more economic activity. So the best places where you would find flat and fertile land so that you can have more economic activity would definitely be plains. They are flat, and river valleys because they are very fertile, right? So because in these areas you can build a lot of houses, you can have industries, there's so much that you can do with everything is possible, and so agriculture, absolutely right. So all of this happens. Densely populated areas would be plains and river valleys. So this is basically the example of densely populated areas. Sparsely populated areas are areas which you don't have too many people living in, or they are uninhabited because the environment is not favorable to that. So for example, polar regions, extreme temperatures, deserts, extreme temperatures, low-lying areas prone to floods, slopes of mountain, how will you construct anything over there? Thickly forested areas, very difficult to cut down, and so as a reason because of this, these are sparsely populated areas. So how have we answered? We've explained that it's not uniform. We've spoken about some areas being densely populated, some areas being sparsely populated, and we've given examples of both. Right? Okay, let's move on to our next question. Civics. Why is the separation between religion and state important? I'm fantastic, Janatul Fardous. How are you? Answer this question. I'm happily taking a sip of water. Tell me. Okay, great. So, densely populated areas, sparsely populated areas, we finished. Let's talk about the next question. Why is the separation between religion and state important? And what is this term called when there is a separation of state and religion? That's my question, it's not written. Come on. Why is the separation between religion and state important? Come on, come on, come on. First of all, what is this term called? When there is a separation of religion and state, it is called Dipti says because it causes marginalization. Pranjal, yes, secularism. This is called secularism, which is basically when there is a separation between religion and state. Now the question over here is, why is this important? That is what you have to answer over here. Absolutely right. To prevent domination of the majority by the majority religious groups. Absolutely correct. So, number one, it is very important because separation of religion and state is very, very important because it prevents domination of the minority groups by the majority groups. So, basically domination over and discrimination against other religions. If you have a majority group, majority means larger numbers, minority means smaller amount or lesser amount of numbers. If you have a larger amount of numbers and these people hold a lot of power, or you know, they have positions of power, then it may be possible that they may sort of dominate the minority groups and favor their religion, and which is why secularism is very, very important. You need to have a separation of the state and religion. This is point number one. Point number two is that it allows the citizen or an individual to practice religion the way that they want to, right? So which is, you can practice the religion the way that you want, you can adopt another religion if you want, you can interpret the religion the way that you want. So if you think about it, there are two aspects. This would be inter-conflict, okay, which means that basically you're saying problem between religions, inter-conflict, and this would be intra because this means it gives freedom to the individual, okay, and this is a way to remember it, okay. Religious tolerance is that only. Dhirendra, religious tolerance means that you are not you do not have a problem with any particular religion. You do not have a problem with how a religion is practicing its religions, and this is what religious tolerance is, which means that you're basically fair and neutral to all religions, and this is basically secularism. Right? Aisha says, ma'am, please take my name. Aisha, don't cry. I took your name now. Okay. All right. Let's move on to our next question. 3 more questions. 3 mark question means how many points? 1 mark question means 1 or 2 points. 2 mark question means 2 or 3 points. 3 mark question means how many? Means 3 to 4 points. Right? How does diversity teach us to be tolerant? Well, diversity is great in terms of helping us to be tolerant because it means that you appreciate the difference between so many different type of people. Diversity basically means difference. Different type of people, you could have different type of people in terms of, you know, ethnicities, language, religion. So when you have diversity, it actually helps you to appreciate more about each other and helps you to be more tolerant when you understand each other. Right? Okay, now let's move on to our section, which is Aditya, Ma'am, Tarana. Ma'am, Tarana, what is that? Okay, the question, I'm getting distracted with what you are putting up on the screen. Now, this question says, you start answering my questions. I'm only giving all the answers. Where are your answers? Come on, tell me. The question says, explain different sources used by historians to write history of the last 250 years. Give one limitation of these sources. So first we have to talk about, number one, we have to talk about different sources used, right? And second, we have to talk about one limitation. There are 2 things that we have to put into this. Okay, now, yes, Anshika says diversity is beautiful and should be practiced. Absolutely right. But now focus on this question. Come on, tell me. What are the different sources used by historians? I'm speaking so fast, MC Hack, because time is running short and I want to chat with you all also. So I have a choice. Either I go slow and I don't chat with you all, or I go fast and I chat with you all. Tell me what you prefer. Okay. Yes. Written records. Absolutely right. So basically broadly, but written records are part of what? Wait, I will tell you. I know it's too big an answer, but basically there are 2 sorts of sources. One are official sources, okay, and the other is unofficial sources. Now, official sources are what? Official sources or official records are those records that are written down by the British officials. Why are they official? Because the British were the rulers of India at that point in time. So anything that they write down will be official. Yeah. Now, what are some examples of these kind of records? It could be letters, memos, agreements, plans, investigations, policy. Basically, anything that the British documented and kept in an archive, which is a place to store the record, that was an official record. Now, what was the limitation of this record? Well, the limitation of this record is that it took into account only the perspective of the British people. Only their perspective. But is history only about the perspective of the British people? No. It did not tell the story or the perspective of the Indians, of the native people, and that is your limitation. No audio. Can you hear me now? Can you, Gungun, can you hear me now? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can, or if you can hear me? Ma'am, your voice is not coming. They still can't hear.
In my side it's good.
Started without voice. No voice. They still can't hear. Purnima, can you hear me now? Now it's perfect. Oh, thank God. I got so nervous. Okay, let's quickly finish before something else happens, okay? It happened, but doesn't matter. We'll get over it and we'll quickly move on. So, two types of sources we covered, official records and unofficial records. We spoke about the limitation of the official records, which is basically that it does not tell the perspective of the Indian people or the native people. And second is that the unofficial records, the limitation is that you need to be able to read and write to produce such records. Very quickly, let's move on to question number 17. Mama, it was like really, no, it's anyway, now we're back on track. Let's quickly finish this. Okay, now question number 17 says describe resource conservation methods with examples. What do we have to do for this question? We have to name 3 methods of resource conservation and briefly explain how it is used. 3 methods of resource conservation, very, very easy. Radhika, I'll finish it super fast for you. Don't worry about the 6 o'clock time unless you have to go somewhere, in which case you can come back and watch the video later, right? Now, technical difficulty happened. We handled it, but we'll power on. Who can tell me what are the 3 methods of conservation? Quickly, I want to know. This is something that I've taught you in my session. Please, what are the 3? There are certain letters that we use. I'm giving you a hint over here. What are the 3 methods of resource conservation? Come on. Okay, y'all are not telling me, I'll tell you. The 3 methods of resource conservation are, yes, Gungun, that is correct, but the general principle is the 3R principle, right? Water harvesting would fit into one of these 3 R's over here. So the 3 R's are reduce, reuse and recycle. Reduce means we reduce our consumption. So for example, what were the example of this? Switching off a tap, so reduce usage of water, for example, or reduce your usage of electricity. Make sure that you switch off all lights and fans when you leave the room. Next, reuse. Reuse, rainwater harvesting would be a part of reusing, where you have a resource and you're using it again. So for example, you use metal plates instead of paper cups, for example, metal plates instead of paper plates, for example. So this would be reuse. Recycle, which means you're transforming a product, you're taking one resource, you don't need it anymore, you can't use it anymore, so you send it to a recycling plant and you get a completely new product. So you can recycle metal, you can recycle glass, right? So this is reduce, reuse, recycle, refuse, recover. Absolutely right. Absolutely correct. But right now we've spoken about 3 R's, which is basically reduce, reuse and recycle. Okay. Reduce, reuse, recycle, refuse and recover. I think I'm recovering from the technical glitch. You recover also. Let's move on. Okay. Question number 18, name any 2 steps that the government has taken to conserve forests. So what do we need to do over here? Number 1, we need to talk about the importance of forests. This is how we would answer this. Secondly, what we would do over here is elaborate on any 2 initiatives that are taken by the government. Okay, how to conserve plants and animals in India. So first of all, Tamalika's Dreamland, thank you very much. Okay, now listen, explain the importance of forests. How are forests useful to us? Tell me how are forests useful to us? Forests are useful to us because the trees will give us oxygen. It helps to avoid soil erosion. Right? It gives us so many products such as trees, plants, fruit, food. Apart from this, it's home to so many animals which are so useful to us, and this is how forests are important to us. Now, forest is life. Beautiful. Dhirendra, that's a beautiful way of putting it across. Very nice. Now, we know why forests are important to us. Now, name 2 steps that the government has taken to conserve forests. So, I put down 4 over here. You can put down any 2. Van Mahotsav. Van Mahotsav is like a festival of planting trees, making people aware about the benefits of afforestation, basically. This is number 1. Then you could have certain areas being set aside as national sanctuaries or reserved forest or protected areas. So, the government has a right to say that no illegal activities can happen in this area, and this is a way of conserving or preserving the forest. Apart from that, you also have agreement with sites where the wildlife in the forest is taken care of by making sure that the wildlife doesn't go extinct. So you're taking care of endangered species, right? And then you have wildlife protection projects like the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, which you have actually legal measures that are in place. So these are the ways that you can actually conserve forests. You need to put down only 2. Right? Okay, let's move on to question number 19, which says, write a short note on the drafting of the Indian Constitution. Right? Yes, like for Tiger, Project Tiger. Absolutely right. Okay? Now, let us go ahead and let us answer this question. Write a short note about the drafting of the Constitution. Now we have to understand that in the British period, at that point in time, there was a lot of there were a lot of issues, like social issues like untouchability. There was poverty, food security was the problem, and there was a lot of basically the people needed to be in a better place. So the Indian National Congress, leaders of the Indian National Congress, they decided that it would be a good idea to have a constitution. So what they do is that in 1934, which we discussed earlier, they go ahead and they make a demand for a constituent assembly, which would go ahead and make this constitution. So they made this demand in 1934. That was the first step. But was it accepted over there? It was not accepted over there. Did it happen at that point in time? It didn't happen at that point in time. It happened more than 10 years later in 1946. So in 1946, you had the establishment of a constituent assembly. Then you had you had Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the drafting committee. So basically, you had the drafting committee which went ahead and drafted the constitution. So, Constitution of India was adopted on 26 November 1949, and then finally, the Constitution of India came into force on 26 January 1950, which is now celebrated as our Republic Day. Right? So, what you will basically say is that the Indian leaders realized that there were a lot of problems. You will name the problems. Then you say that they put up a demand for a constituent assembly. Then there was the establishment of the constituent assembly. Then you have the drafting committee headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and the Constitution of India was adopted on 26 November 1949, and then finally the Constitution of India came into force on 26 January 1950. Right? Okay, let's move on to our 5 marks question. 5 marks question. Drafting means to write down, Pranjal. Right? They needed to write down or note down what would be the points in this constitution. Right? 5 mark question. Let us take the question in this section. Explain 5 ways in which the East India Company introduced changes in the administration. Please, you go ahead and put your answer while I go ahead and tell you the answer also. I'm going to go at like super speed to try and get you in time for your next class. So, 5 ways in which the East India Company introduced changes in the administrative setup is number 1. we know that the British were sort of conquering more territories outside Bengal. So as they started, conquering more and more territories, they divided these territories that they were conquering into presidencies. They largely had 3 presidencies, which was Bombay, Madras, and Bengal. Now, these presidencies or administrative units were ruled by a governor, right? Then 2 types of courts were established at a district level. So again, to make it very simply, they took India, they divided it into 3 presidencies. These presidencies were ruled by a governor. Each administrative unit or presidency was further broken up into district. At each district you had a civil court and you had a criminal court. And who was the head of the civil court? The head of the civil court was the district collector, and the head of the criminal court was the Qazi and the Mufti. District collectors presided over civil courts, criminal courts were presided over by Qazi or Mufti. Then you had the Regulating Act of 1773, where you had a Supreme Court that was established. And then you had local laws which were codified and translated into English. And then you had the collector, who became the main figure or the principal figure in the district, and the collectorate, which is basically his office, became the new center of power. So if you're talking about 5 points, let me give you these 5 points. There are a lot of points over here. I'll just break it down into 5 points. Point number 1. British territories in India were divided into presidencies. These presidencies were Bombay, Madras, and Bengal. So this could be 1 point, right? These presidencies were ruled by a governor. This would be the 2nd point. Then you have presidencies were further broken into districts. The districts you had 2 types of courts. So this is your 3rd point. Which is a civil court and a criminal court, and the civil court was presided over by the Qazi, by the district collector, and the criminal court was presided over by the Mufti or the Qazi. Then you have number 4, Regulating Act of 1773 brought in a Supreme Court, and the laws were basically codified and translated into English for better justice. And point number 5 is that you have the collector that became the principal figure or the main figure in your district, and the collectorate became his office became the main center of power, right? The main job of the Governor General was to introduce administrative reforms. Correct. Absolutely right, Ritika. Okay, with that we move on to our last question for today, which says, what do you understand by the term secularism? Discuss the features of secularism in India with examples. Now, we just discussed secularism before. We spoke about the fact that secularism is basically a state that does not officially promote any one religion. So we are talking about separation between state and religion, and this is essentially what secularism means. And we have the Indian Constitution, which allows its citizens to live freely, to have freedom of religion, and basically to live by their religious practices, right? Religion equality, free to follow any religion, absolutely right. This is what secularism means. Absolutely correct. Now, how is secularism practiced in India? What are the features of secularism in India specifically? Let's discuss this. There are 3 strategies that India practices to ensure that secularism happens in the country. Number 1, you have the strategy of distancing. Strategy of distancing means that the state and the religion are separate. India maintains a neutral view as far as religion is concerned, and it doesn't get into anybody's, it doesn't support any one religion basically, right? It doesn't take sides. This is strategy of distancing. So it is neutral, right? Then, strategy of non-interference is strategy number 2. Strategy of non-interference means that the state or the government does not interfere with any religion's religious practices. So, for example, you have the law of helmets. That it's a law, it's a rule that everybody is supposed to wear a helmet while riding a bike. Now, Sikh community, the members of the Sikh community, they wear a turban. So naturally for them, it's not possible to wear the to wear the helmet. So in this case, what does the government or the state do? They do not interfere with this at all, and they say, all right, it's your religious practice, you practice it the way that it wants. So they are an exception to this particular rule. So in this way, the state does not interfere with religious practices. However, while we are saying that it doesn't interfere in religious practices, it also does practice the strategy of intervention, in which case it can actually, if it feels that there is a particular religious practice that is affecting the fundamental rights of the citizens of this country, then the state can step in and say this is absolutely not allowed. For example, you have the practice of untouchability. Would our country allow this sort of practice even though it may be practiced by a religious group? No, they would not, and this is where they would step in and they would interfere. Right, and this is basically how we answer this question. And with this question, we're absolutely done. I'm sorry for the technical glitch, but we have finished all our 22 questions. I hope this has given you a lot of practice for your midterm exams. And why don't you start SST classes for class 7? So Chita, it is on the cards. We will keep you posted. In the meantime, before I go, be a champion. Watch the champions. Have you registered for the BYJU'S Scholarship Test? Please go ahead and enroll for it, register for it. You have some awesome opportunities over there to fly to Australia and watch the match live. So please definitely do this. Apart from that, please know that BYJU'S mini learning program is now free. So make use of this opportunity. It is free for the first 500 users every week. All you need to do is you need to go and click on the link and type in the code YTFIRST and you'll get this program absolutely free. Until then, keep watching all our sessions, champions, on the BYJU'S 6 to 8 channel, and definitely do not forget to like, share and subscribe. I'm going to see you very, very soon. Aisha says happy Teachers Day in advance. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, all of you. I'm going to see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.